The fairy tree is synonymous with Irish folklore, tales of fairy folk and changelings. You will always spot a fairy tree by its lonely position, normally in the centre of a field. These beautiful barren trees were often seen as symbols for the fairy folk. Farmers would cut around them and avoid them. Locals would tie ribbons to these trees, and as they tied these ribbons, they would place their intentions on the ribbons. You could use a strand of your hair, an item of clothing, an item of cloth that had been rubbed upon a wound and tied to the tree. Offerings would be left by the tree for the wee folk. Elementals are often regarded as these light, gentle fairy folk, but among Irish people, especially among rural farming communities and those who practice magical traditions, know that to be very, very different. The fairy folk, the fae, the elementals, whichever you choose to call them, really don't have a lot of time for us humans that have destroyed the planet, have drained it from its resources, have polluted the air, killed the animals and drained the land from all its richness and minerals and qualities. I find people can be quite disrespectful about the fae and almost assume the elementals would want to work with you. It's very rare elementals will work, but they will work when they want to work with you. And the elementals in their nature will choose how that comes about. In times of famine, when the church controlled what was said and done, and babies that were either miscarried or born out of wedlock and born sleeping were refused Christian burials, their mothers carried their little bundles and placed them under the hawthorn tree. Each tree is significant and would always be connected as a sacred burial place for little ones. Hawthorn trees are also connected to fertility, and many women would place ribbons, items of adornment, in order to place a wish on fertility and a baby. Tales of changelings and fairy folk, and the babies replaced with a changeling. The poem by W.B. Yeats, The Stolen Child. Come away, O human child, to the waters in the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. These stories of changelings, wild, untamed hawthorn, watches over the field it governs and surveys. It will stand here long after we are gone, alone in the centre. There are many ways to work with the fae. Never assume they want to work with you. Always leave an offering that is organic, such as pure honey, whiskey, fresh butter. Never leave anything such as pewter, which is harmful, anything that's processed or has chemicals in it. Do not ignorantly tie your wishes to the tree and beg for things when you have done nothing for the land and nature and its inhabitants. I have seen people tie ribbons and cords, strangling the branches, cutting into newborn sap and kindling, in the purposes of finding their soulmate, with no regard for the life force that flows from the tree. And they wonder why nothing happens for them, or they attract the wrong partner. If you have a fairy tree nearby, place an offering and do not ask for anything. It's also really important to listen to your intuition. Your body senses danger. Your body senses when something feels right or wrong. And as you approach the hawthorn or tree, If your body is telling you to turn back, that something doesn't feel right, the energy is off, you're left with a feeling of trepidation or dread, that is the answer. Not to go working with them. And also ask yourself why you wish to work with the Fae. Are you prepared to do what is required of you? The Fae may wish you to fight and work on behalf of the earth, the animals, to defend what little resources we have left. Working with elementals is not for some whimsy, new age, spiritual, I want to find my soulmate or get rich. It's not something you stick on a vision board. The Fae are not these silly little winged creatures that have nothing between their ears. You're dealing with energies and elementals that are hundreds if not thousands of years old. You're dealing with source energy, energy far beyond our comprehension, energy that will be with us here long before we have left this earth, and will probably understand more when we are no longer here. Every time I visit this hawthorn on my parents' land, I always feel welcome. I feel a deep sense of peace, and I have always been drawn to this tree. Even as a child, I would make my way down here, have a look at it, and then take off on my merry way. As a teenager, I would come down here with my music or sketches, and as I began to understand the ways of the Fae, I would have more of a deep reverence when I approached this area. As humans, we wish to take and take. And working with elementals, it's about balance, divine order, balance and divine masculine and feminine energies. Knowing you are no lesser or greater than the cow in the next field, or the beautiful dog that lies by your feet, or the cat purring in your lap. We all have a role to play. We are all connected. We belong to something so much greater than we could ever believe, and there is so much love that awaits us. You can welcome the earth energies into your everyday life by doing simple things. Nothing that requires superhuman sacrifice. Things such as recycling, helping animals, being kind to the environment. This is all connected to source energy. And the greatest lie of all is that we are not connected to the earth. We are part of it, we come from it, and we shall return to it. And while we have this time in this earthly form, it is upon us to take care of the world and nature, and the creatures that live within it that do not have a voice, and offer thanks for the part we play in it all. You will be guided. If you have fallen across this video now, know that you have a calling. Know that you matter. Know that the small things that you may do, no matter how tiny they are, the love you show to the pets, the kindness you exhibit in everyday life, it all matters. And whether or not you realize it, your actions vibrate across the earth in tiny little energetic signatures, and everything is connected. When elementals choose to work with you, and they choose to work with you, it's not something you can force, And I love that about them, as I find the fair weather friends and those that want to have their agendas and their selfish needs met are weeded out very quickly. But when they choose to work with you, you will see a ring of toadstools. You will start to see synchronicities in animals and birds around you. A magpie may follow you. You may notice a cat constantly around. Ravens may pop up in the same number and frequency. The Fae have ways of letting you know that they wish to work with you. And they also may choose not to. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It simply means the particular elemental or tree or energy you are attempting to connect with does not resonate with you on your particular frequency. You need to trust this, as the elementals truly know what is best for you. There are also elementals who do not work with humans, who have absolutely no regard for us as humans because of the destructive force we have unleashed upon the world. And this is where it's incredibly dangerous to venture into places that are very, very densely overgrown, that are isolated, places that have very sacred reputations. Respect the energies you're working with. The interesting thing about the spiritual journey is the more spiritual you think you're becoming, the more your ego is stepping into the driving seat. I have met people who feel like they're channeling Jesus, Buddha, Dalai Lama, you name it. And it's their ego talking to me. You must be respectful of the places you work in. If you feel you're welcome, your heart will light up. You will feel a lightness and a joy around you. You may hear a ringing sound in your ear. Your solar plexus will be drawn, childlike, to these areas. And if you're not welcome, you just know. Ever walk into someone's house when they've had a row or a room and just know that there had been a vibe or energy there where you know you're not welcome? You will get the same feeling when you approach these places. Respect that energy. Elementals can be very funny, very playful, but also fairly no nonsense when it comes to their boundaries and protective enchantments. I always advise to leave out offerings and gentleness and walk away. Do not venture boldly into these places or up to hawthorn trees that are strange to you or that you've never bothered visit before, with offerings of milk and honey and whiskey, tying ribbons to the tree. Best of luck to you if you take that on. Don't be surprised if there's a flat tire on the way home, you suddenly feel ill, or everything starts falling apart around you. There are energies that exist that do not want to work with us. When they do, you will know, and even then it's an undertaking. I would advise with caution. I truly believe there are some things that are mystical in this world, and the beautiful hawthorns are one of them. The wood itself is sacred, and when storm damaged can be used for wand making. Beautiful white flowers come here and appear when it's in bloom. Tales of leprechauns appearing at hawthorn trees, of the little folk, of small little women disappearing into the tree. There are different families the banshee follows. There are different traditions of the old witches' ways, and the lore of the hawthorn as a sacred and magical tree will live on in Irish history and mythology for eternity. If you come across a hawthorn, send blessings, but do not approach, only with the deepest reverence. Blessed be. The fairy tree in Irish is known as a sceach gheal. Sceach as in the thornbush briar, and gheal as in luminous, bright. The She are the race of people and fae connected to the Tuatha De Danann, the last elemental tribes of Ireland. At the age of man, they disappeared, and the Tuatha De Danann are an ancient race of warriors. The She are known to be long, tall, bright beings, and the hawthorns mark their entry into the underworlds. To this day, entire motorways were rerouted because ancient hawthorns stood at the crossways. Curses, illnesses, freak accidents would befall those who dared harm or move, disturb a fairy tree. Hawthorn trees were also known to be very powerful fertility trees. The white blossoms that bloomed from April to May were known to be aphrodisiacs, and the sails of these trees bloomed at one point. Wands made from these trees were meant to contain elemental powers. Working with the She is not to be undertaken lightly. The hawthorns represent some of the very last known links to our Celtic heritage and must be preserved. Most farmers will leave their hawthorn trees undisturbed, and for many they were a symbol of prosperity, and offerings would be made to appease the elementals. Farmers who had accidents befall them would have been known to have broken their pact with the elementals, the She. The pact could be something as simple as the cream off the first milk, the first barrel of apples, and they broke this. Accidents would happen and nothing could be appeased because the sacred contract was broken. Music would be heard, strange music no one could explain. Lights would appear dancing at night around the hawthorns, especially at May. The original maypoles were made from hawthorn trees. How much power a simple tree has, and the energy contained within it, is a source of folklore for many generations to come.